Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another RobCast. This is part two of Live at Largo with Elizabeth Gilbert. My friend Liz and I began the new year by doing a show at Largo, and the show, I think we went for 2 hours, so we split it up. Last episode and this episode. This episode is part two. And the way we did it is I would ask her a question, she would answer the question, and then she had written all of these words on little scraps of paper for me, and one word on each scrap, and then she put it in a glass jar. So then she would hold the jar up to me, and I would pull out one word and then riff on it for a bit. So this part begins. I have just pulled out one of those pieces of paper, and away we go. Now, before we get to that, new year, new tour. This week, I will be starting the Introduction to Joy tour in Florida. I'll be in Orlando Friday night and Tampa Saturday night. And then next month, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Kansas City. I am coming your way. Prepare yourselves. And then new dates. There are more dates beyond that are up, and then there are more dates coming soon. So, Introduction to Joy tour. We are coming your way in the very near future. Other than that, here we go. Part two, Live at Largo with Elizabeth Gilbert. Lust. Nice. I love it. Lust. Well, obviously we hear the word lust, we all think sex. One of my favorite books is Irving Stone's Lust for Life, which is his biography of Van Gogh. But I see lust as a far larger, sexy, but as a far larger. Desire is like a more refined, you have your desires, you have your wants, you have your dreams, which is like the unicorn, woo. But lust for me is like your hips, loins. Did I just say loins? Splangnon. I'll even see people doing something and think they need to get their hips into it. But there are these primordial sexual energies that literally make human beings. And that, by the way, the word sext is this ancient Latin word. I lean in, by the way.
Did you just say the word sext?
Yeah. The word sex has these
I thought
roots.
you said sext, and I'm like, I don't think that's an ancient Latin word, right?
I'm getting there. That the word sex comes from this ancient Latin word where something was sexed, meaning cut off. And so your sexual energies are your desires to be reconnected with everything you're here to be connected with. So then sexuality becomes a far larger, we in some ways are born into these disconnections and we know they're not right. And so sex becomes, we're trying to be like sex to things, which is why, by the way, your favorite bands, there's a sexual, or performers, there's a sexual element to it. And for many people, they haven't heard sexuality talked other than just two people fumbling around and not the transfer of energies that happen all the times because we're all longing for connection. Are you with me on this? So in some ways, I see lust in a far larger landscape of all of the ways that you've become disconnected from the earth. Think about what happens when nations become disconnected from other nations. Imagine when we become disconnected from our bodies, let alone disconnected from other bodies. And lust is this beautiful, it's like a hunger, it's like a thirst, it's like a drive that this is not how it should be. And I'm giving myself body, mind, soul to helping repair this place, put it back together. There's these great lines in the New Testament about the reconciliation of all things. There's one line about the restoration of all things. There's a line Jesus uses, the renewal of all things. It's like something deep in spirit knows that this thing wants to be united. It wants to be one. All that's broken wants to be put back together. This is why you're so grieved with our current state. is because you know that this isn't where it's supposed to be heading. There's that within you which is frustrated, but there's something deeper within you that knows this isn't how it's to be. And that's how, yeah. I could go on and on about that. These are good. Lust, resilience, these words, I love them. They're really good. And I also, I think we need more talking about sexuality as it relates to the whole thing. Because for so many people, lust, sexuality was all just bodies and not a body which resides within a larger phenomenon that is you. See, for many people, their body is this encasement, meat sack, and then there is or is not soul, spirit, all of these things that reside within the body. The body is the boundary and the border, and then there's all this infinite lizness which exists in the body. But you are spirit. Your body is something happening in the larger phenomenon that is you. And
Back up.
your
Body is something that's happening in the larger phenomenon that is you.
So,
Okay, I got it. I think I got it.
well, think about the times when somebody's not here, but they're with us in spirit.
Right.
That means then that their body is not the definite boundary of their personhood.
Okay.
Or think about Martin Luther King Jr. is still with us at some level. And that far transcends his physical body.
Right.
So the body, your physical body, is a particular amalgamation of cells, molecules, and atoms that is happening within the larger phenomenon that is you. So I might be right here on the stage, just limited with this corporeal body. But when I say to you in the back row, your sins are forgiven. Now there's something happening bigger than just his body. Are you with me on this? And if you come to see this then you come to see sexuality as all of the ways that we are longing to be connected at all of these different levels. This is why the political division in our country is so grieving, is because you know that this isn't how it's to be, that we're a body, all of us, one. And this is where a lot of this pain and grief comes from. If you begin to read it spiritually, and you could even argue sexually, then you say, oh, that's what's happening here. There you go. Yeah.
I think that a lot of us spend a lot of our lives in modernity where your body, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically a broomstick that carries a jar with your brain in it around.
Right.
That you can put your brain jar in front of what it needs to be in front of.
Yes.
And then the broomstick will just hobble over to put the brain jar in this place. So it's like, right? I mean, this is the relationship that I think a lot of people have to their bodies.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, wake up, pick up the brain jar, move the brain jar into a car, deliver the brain jar to an office.
Right.
You know, and it's like, no, that's not what this thing is.
Right.
You know, this thing is, I mean, we haven't even begun to fully understand what this thing is yet. You know, the fact that I keep quoting Martha, but she is brilliant. But she has this great thing about how when you're disconnected from your body, you know, there's all this that you feel before you know.
Yes.
Dogs know this. When I walk down the street with my dog in New York City, there's dogs that from 2 blocks away, he just does not like that dog. And there's dogs from 2 blocks away where he's like, that dog's the love of my life. And he's never met them. And I'm like, how do you know? And then I'm like, oh, I also do that.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm actually not in my head, I meet someone and I instantly am like, warm, love, fuzzy, or I'm instantly like, bleh, bleh, you know, security, you know, like, if I overthink it, I'm dead. If I don't think it, I can move and navigate through the world by intuition, by instinct, I can feel what wants to happen next. And Martha's great description about how there are sensors in your body that pick up stuff. So I have a friend who's a private investigator in North Carolina, and in rural North Carolina, he's like Mayberry PI. And a lot of his job, because they don't have no-fault divorce in North Carolina, and because he needs to make money, is to follow people around, catching them cheating on their spouses and taking photographs and bringing evidence into court. He's discovered that and he's a hunter also. This is all happening in like rural mountains of North Carolina. He's got a lot of really good stories. But when he's following a cheating woman around to get pictures of her going into a motel or whatever with her lover, her boyfriend, he has found that he cannot look at her body directly, even from several hundred feet away, or she will feel it. And so the way he has to follow her is he can only look at her through her peripheral vision when he's 2 blocks away. So he'll follow her looking. The second he lays eyes on her, she goes. We have senses that are unbelievable, and we're not using them because we're in the brain jar. And the way that Martha describes it is that if you're not connected and using, which is also part of our starting tonight off with dancing is about this, that if you're not using or connecting or feeling this, basically it's as if you've been given the newest, most expensive, amazing Apple laptop and you're using it as a placemat. And because you don't even know how to use it. You don't even know what it's for. So whatever you can do to drop back into here, it's going to make everything else make more sense.
And I don't mean to interrupt.
I just like it when you get that perch.
Well, this is the great leap.
It's the Rob perch. Wait a second. There's also this one. I love you.
That was a pretty good one right there.
Thank you.
I was like, I recognize that. I was just thinking what you were saying about the leap. Our Earth right now is in peril. And so for many people, it's sound the alarm about the Earth, sound the alarm about the alert. But the leap that has to be made at a consciousness level is the environment is both internal and external to you. Your body is made of the same stuff as the creation around you. So the environment is both you and the setting that you are in. And so trying to talk to people about care for the Earth when they are disconnected from their own bodies may never work. Because you're asking people to make a concentric...
Did you guys just feel that in your literal body? I felt that in...
You're asking somebody who's disconnected from their body to care about the Earth to make like 2 or 3 skips in growth. And generally the way that growth and evolution works is step by step by step by step. That's why you wonder, why don't those people get it? Because you're asking them to understand something they can't. But if you begin with connection with body, then you are restoring proper reconciliation of this environment, which then frees the person to understand that this connection is a microcosm of a larger connection that needs to be made. And this is why the green movement, all these wonderful groups, start with people's bodies. For example, I know a woman who started going to a yoga class in the Midwest where a number of women were taking yoga for the first time. And she said by the end of the class, most of them would be weeping, just a wreck on their mats. And she talked to the teacher, and the teacher said, I know this happens every time. She said, these women have been raised in a world where they were never taught that their body is good and how to be connected with their body. They're literally weeping. It's like getting to know this thing that you've been in, around, journeying with. I think you actually start there. And that's how we get to, oh, there's a planet. There's no planet B. We need to think about this differently when we start thinking about this differently. I know. That's what we're doing.
Good answer to lust.
No, we covered some ground there, didn't we? Okay. Ready?
I love your brain jar.
Brain jar.
I love your brain jar.
My brain jar affirms your brain jar.
I love hanging out with your brain jar.
Okay. A couple of years ago, the fall of 2014, we went on tour with Oprah.
To drop a name.
I'm sorry. Oprah Winfrey. And I know. You were all like, wait, who? And it was an arena. We did NBA arenas with Deepak Chopra. And it was quite a road show. By the way,
That's
side
how we
note,
met.
That's how we met. We met in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta. By the way, in that particular world, every time you turn around, there's a black SUV and somebody in a headpiece going, excuse me, please come this way. So we were ferried around. And my son, who was 16 at the time, was doing an online school because he said, Dad, I want to travel with you. Remember that? Yep. And oftentimes,
there were a couple of specific times when our car was me, my son, Liz, and Deepak Chopra. And Liz and I are just like, we're like just tossing grapes in his mouth. Like, say something else, right? We're like on the school bus, like, say something cool. And he would be like, the whole universe is a consciousness waiting to be happen while we witness together the impermeables. And and at one point, the whole car ride, he just did, remember that? A continuous, awesome riff rant, Deepak style. And we get there, and he just gets out of the car and walks away. And Trace goes, that was pretty cool. Remember that? It's so great. And you and I were like, yeah, what else would you say about that? That was pretty cool. Okay, so I heard every time you spoke, I heard that talk. I guess there was 8 cities. I heard your talk eight times. And I heard it in Houston. I heard it in wherever we went. And Detroit, right. And there is this moment when, and it happened in every city, when you're talking about being on the bathroom floor. And then you say, and the arena would get like so quiet. And 25,000 people is quiet, if that makes sense. It's like a quiet you can hear. And then Liz would say, and so I decided to leave my marriage. And the place, you could just feel people like wait. And I was so struck watching it, and then I would anticipate it in each city. Like this is truly blowing minds that you could do something. Obviously, a very, very complicated issue. Nevertheless, you could see people going, wait. You could feel it all the way to the back. And I want to link that with a couple of years ago. Since then, you said to me one time, I feel like I go around the world passing out permission slips. I think that is one of your great gifts to us, but I would love to hear you say, I thought it was an astounding summary in some ways of something that you do in lots of different ways for people. I go around the world. Wait, hold on. I know. Thank you. Thank you. I caught myself, but somebody was a step ahead.
Sir,
as
what's
always
your
the case.
question? I'm going to need you to
Could you
galvanize a question.
Could you please say more about handing out permission slips?
Okay. So we're all in 4th grade our entire lives. And I still get phone calls, and I think I'm in trouble from the principal or the teacher. You know, there's some 9-year-old who never stops being afraid that they're going to get in trouble and wanting to know what the rules are to not get in trouble and to be good. You know, my deepest fundamental, the dark underworld of every fear that I have is I'm not a good person. So if I take whatever anxiety I've got and go down to the bottom of the there's nothing below that. There's nothing lower than that. I'm not a good person. I'm not good. I'm not good. How do I be good? What do I have to do to be good? What does a good person do? What does a good person look like? How do they behave? What do their marriages look like? What do their kids look like? What do their responsibilities look like? What do their homes look like? What do I have to do to lose that fear that I'm not good? The problem is then you are Googling, should I get divorced? You know? And because you're so disconnected from your essence, which already is good, as you know. And if you truly believed that you were good, that I doubt there's any psychopaths or sociopaths in this room. Maybe 1 or 2. I'm looking at... I see 1. We have such little faith in our essential right to be here, and we never stop trying to pay rent on living because we think that there's something, you've spoken about this so beautifully, but there's something that's owed from you. There's something that has to be proven. There's a rent that you're constantly paying for the gift of just existing. And if you were to imagine dropping into this faith that is so deep and cradling and universal and loving that it's got you so held, and all it ever says to you is, you're good, you're so good. This one is so good. Love this one. Oh, I love this one so much. Which is what the universe says when you get quiet enough. You know, all it says is, oh, I love this one so much. I love this one. Precious, precious, precious. And if you were to believe that that could possibly be true, then what would you do with your life? You know, if that wasn't the obstacle. And that's the permission slip that I feel like I'm constantly wanting to hand everybody is, you're good, you're fine, you're good, doesn't matter. What do you want? Like, what do you want? And guess what? All the people that you think you're going to disappoint and break and hurt, they're also good. They're also held by that same force. You know, if a friend of mine said to me, like, when I was so anxious about what's going to happen to my ex-husband, how is he going to survive this divorce, she said, have you ever felt in your life like there was a benevolent force guiding you, that there was spirits around you, that there was something holding you, that you were being protected? Did you ever have that feeling that something was protecting you? And I said, yes. And she said, he's got the same thing. And it's not called Liz. Something much bigger than both of you is holding everything together. Forces bigger than both of you is holding everything together. When I get lost and am I good? Should I control this? How do I fix this? It's what I'm forgetting is that I'm a participant in this vast thing that I will never understand. And the only clues I have for what to do are what this says. You know, the longing, the wanting, the curiosity, the zhuzh. You know, that's all I have to be guided by. If I'm doing it any other way, it's not going to work. So yeah, I mean, I literally do exercises with people, and you're all welcome to do this when you go home. But when I do a creativity workshop sometimes, and I have people write themselves a permission slip from the principal's office. And they get to say, dear, whatever your name is, and the first line is always, so dear Rob, this is a note from the principal's office. You have permission to. And then they get to list everything that they have permission to do. And then I have people pop up and read things off the list, and the entire room says, permission granted. And there's this energy that starts to build, and it's so incredible, because it's things like, and people will just jump up and be like, I have permission to buy a mountain bike, even though I've got debt, because I really want a mountain bike. And the whole room's like, permission granted! You know, like, I have permission to not pick up the phone when my sister-in-law calls. Permission granted! I have permission, you know, and it's like, you see this liberation building.
Who needs permission right now
Who
for
needs
something?
permission?
Let's go. Anybody? Yes, right there. What do you need permission for?
I need permission to love myself.
Permission
Granted.
Okay, wait a minute.
Oh.
Wait a minute. Good start. Specificity is the soul of narrative. Every novelist knows this. Did you feel that the room was a little slack on that? The reason is because none of us can picture what you mean. It's vague. So if you were in my workshop, I would make you go back and I would make you put something incredibly granularly specific. So for me this summer when I did it, what I wrote was, you have permission to buy an orange tent that can go in the back of your car so that when you're driving around with the dog and you feel like you want to camp somewhere, you can just camp at any time. Permission granted. That's a thing. Permission to love myself. I don't even know what that means in the vague. So if you don't mind working with me, let's play in this space. I want you to come up with something so specific to your exact life at this moment in your experience that you have permission to do. And it doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be articulated specifically. Does that make sense? Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got?
All right. Take a girls' trip to Thailand for my birthday.
Permission granted! Do you see the difference? Because we were all like, okay, love yourself. I mean, sure, no one's withholding that. You have permission to take a girls' trip to Thailand for your birthday. It's permission granted. That's something you can do.
The universal is always hunting for a particular.
Oh,
So
that's what I was trying to say in 10 minutes.
no, I was just giving a little spin on it.
No, you're good. Over to you, Pastor Bell.
No, I was
Yes,
just
yes.
like you think
That's
about universals like love, hope, grace, these big giant ideas that we all go, yeah, 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 but without particulars, flesh and blood expressions of that. Unless the word becomes flesh, then it's too. You can dance to that.
Dance to that one.
So this is oftentimes you notice people are stuck because they're stuck in the universals. I just want it to be everything I'm here to be. Being fairly wide. Are you with me on this? Right? Like I just want more hope. Still a little bit wide. I want to get up in the morning and have this. Oh, now we're getting a little closer. So you'll often notice oftentimes people get stuck, and when you start asking about their stuckness, they're stuck on the universals, and it's just the extra beat that you had with Liz where you go, wait. What do I mean by this? And the sooner you can get it into flesh and blood, what would this giant thing that I'm longing for look like in flesh and blood? The sooner you now can act, and now you're on your way.
You taking yourself to Thailand is loving yourself.
Absolutely.
You see that? That's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. You don't set out to do it by setting out to love yourself. You find your heart's desire, and you do that thing. And then I would actually make you go one more step and say, I have permission to go with and name them, the girlfriends and the date. I have permission to go next February, for 2 weeks to Thailand with Amy, with Rob and Liz, or whatever.
Yeah. It was an all-inclusive package, correct? That's so nice of you, by the way. I feel like I think I speak for Liz as well, that we're touched by this act.
I believe the
generosity.
universe wants you to have this, that, and the other thing, but you gotta tell it. Because it doesn't know how to deliver love yourself. But it can get behind, there's a whole energy that now gets behind that idea, because now that idea wants to happen. So now all the forces of all of history and all of energy will suddenly be in the river pushing you to Thailand with your girlfriend.
And if it's a bad idea, you'll know. Often people are like, yeah, but what if it's a dumb... You'll know. Because you'll be like, not Thailand. Bali. Oh. So once you're moving, Spirit has all sorts of ways of guiding. But just stuck, hard. Oh, my goodness. Okay, hoping for the judge. Integrity. Yeah. Integrity is the thing I think about the most that I talk the least about. Yeah, I probably think about, and Kristen and I talk about integrity more than anything, but it's the word I use the least because some things, you set your course, and I think certain things you say explicitly, and hopefully other things people just pick up. But I'm the guy on Instagram who keeps telling you how hot his girlfriend is. At some point, I'm like, are you trying to convince me or you? Are you with me on this? There are certain things, if somebody talks about them too much, I wonder what the problem is. I'll know. And when I was late 20s,
and I was speaking publicly about spiritual things. So I would hang out with other teachers and pastor world. And I noticed this thing that would happen is such and such pastor, whatever, would say to me, hey, have you read and name some book? Oh, this book is like doing amazing things to me. But I could never say that like publicly because that would, the thought police, the doctrinal Gestapo, whatever, I couldn't actually share with the people that I'm talking to that I was listening to that or talking about that or learning from that. And I remember I saw this split between these people with these large sort of platforms and audiences where they had the things that they would say publicly in order to keep the operation running. And then they had this other place where they actually lived from, the kinds of things they were actually curious about, the things that were actually doing things to them. And I remember, this was late 20s, realizing I don't get that luxury. And I distinctly remember thinking, I have to keep it the same thing. My life with my Kristen and the kids and my friends and you, and whatever I talk about in my work. It all has to be one seamless, unified thing, or I can't do it. And I distinctly remember, this was like late 28, 29, thinking, if I do this, I might get critics. Thank God that didn't happen. I don't actually know where this will take me. And Kristen and I, when we first got married, had this sense, we would talk about it like we were 24, that this was an adventure that we get to go on with each other. That was the whole way we understood marriage, is life is an adventure and you decide to go on it with someone. And we had this sense we don't know where it will go, but we'll have to follow it where it leads. And we kept noticing people who at some point got off the road, that's too costly. These people, good friends, won't understand. We might lose money. The masses might criticize us for it. And they just stopped because it was too much risk, too much cost. And we just had this sense no, you just follow it wherever it leads. And you, whatever comes with it, it's fine, it's worth it. For me, the integrity is keeping that there can't be any sort of split. If you meet me and you're like, he's not like that when he talks, then at some level I failed at some level, and that's not. So I have people around me who are very good at, we talk about these things because the public expression has to simply be the overflow of the personal path. And I had this distinct sense that our world needed people who could spout off about things that they actually had experienced. And that I was never to talk about things that I hadn't personally experienced. Because otherwise you're just spouting off ideas and it's just intellectual furniture or doctrines or whatever, and it's not a lived experience of the world. So this word is huge, huge. I've tried to create with my work a space, whether it's here or wherever, where nobody's wondering what I'm trying to sell you. That's a really, really big deal to me, that people would say, oh, he actually believes this. He's actually talking to us about the path he's walking. That's really, really important to me. That you're not at the end there's going to be and now. That's really, really, really important. It's really important. Yeah.
I've heard you say there's that disconnect sometimes where you meet people who are selling something and you're watching them sell the solution. I've got your solution. Yeah. And you're looking at them and you're thinking, this isn't even working for you.
You are
That's
not
a Rob Bell
smoking
line.
what you're selling.
You're not smoking what you're selling.
Yeah.
Look at you. This isn't even working for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you got to keep it airtight. Kristen and I talk about that often. Kristen and I use the phrase airtight integrity. This thing has to be, anybody could deep dive at any level of this in our life, and all they would see is it all lines up.
Integrity turtles all the way down.
Yeah. It's like really, for us, it's like the center
Thanks
of
for
the
getting
whole
that.
thing. I like that too. That was a good one. Yes. Man, these words. Okay, I have a question for you.
I have a question for management. It's really cold on this stage. I either need the air conditioning off or someone has to give me a sweater.
We could probably turn the air conditioning off.
Yeah, maybe. I'm good.
Okay, let's do you want to do a few more?
Rumi says you must ask for what you really want. What I
Let's-
really want is for that air
we'll wrap it
conditioning
up.
to be
We'll
off.
do, we'll do another round and then we'll be done. And
I don't
we'll
want
get
to
you
be
warmed
done.
up.
I just want to be warm.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
let's do a couple
Thank you.
more.
Thank you, everybody.
Here we go.
Oh.
The
Oh my God. See,
Look at that thing.
you have permission to say I'm cold, and then it gets fixed.
You manifest that
I
thing,
manifested
sister.
the shit out of this
Did
shawl.
you ever? That thing, you set your intention. And that thing, it needs an owner's manual. There we go.
Friendly universe. Abundance is just
Right.
ask. You gotta ask.
Right.
Thank you.
Thing came out of nowhere.
Dude,
Permission granted?
permission granted?
Yeah.
I got myself. I actually was thinking, this is really nice. I might want.
Might have to
there's a
walk off stage and keep walking.
There's a sticker. Do you need the sticker? Is that important? Really? Okay, watch this, you guys. Watch this.
She just said there's probably a
lot of things on there. Little,
I feel like there's a whole world
little,
in that one statement that
little
will
corn chip over here. Okay, I want you guys to watch this because it's really important. Okay, watch. Thank you. I'll keep it. Thank you. That's how you receive. Thank you.
This is a question.
Yeah.
Is it true that you quote Rob Bell in public on a regular basis and give him no credit whatsoever? That's a question. One sentence
Damn.
with appropriate punctuation.
Now, Rob. You know. Wow. All right, I'm going
know.
with courage.
Right.
Now you know that there's the 3 stages
Yes.
of appropriation.
Yes, we've talked about this. I
So,
love this.
the 3 stages of
Just
appropriation.
come clean, teach the people.
This
and
is
we'll
how
be
it
on our
works.
way.
I do an event like this with Rob, and then I go out in the world, and all of a sudden I'm just this font of I'm saying things like every universal needs a particular, or whatever. You're like, so this is what we do. It's
Yes.
So the
It wasn't
3
ours in the
stages,
first place.
The 3 stages of appropriation for Liz of Rob's shit is 1. My friend Rob Bell often says,
First 6 months.
that's the first 6 months. Second 6 months, I've heard it said.
And then the third, yep.
I've always said. So, to answer your very directly written question, I do, but not till 18 months after.
Love it. That is so good. Okay. Let's do just a couple more.
This is so warm. I feel this is just my world just got so much better.
Endings.
Endings.
Yeah. I actually find myself talking about this a lot because something happened in the modern world. I think there's a couple of very distinct reasons why that very few people know an ending that's not a divorce rather than a graduation. And that there are these seasons of life, and a season ends or a chapter ends, and it's okay. And something can be good, and it's okay to end it while it's still good. How many of you stayed too long somewhere or in a relationship, and you actually can give us time on how long you stayed too long? Like, here was the window when it was time to go, and I held on because it was known, safe, there was a paycheck. And it's when you stayed after that date that it went south on you. And I think this is really interesting because there are all these interesting studies on how with the invention of electricity, people started sleeping less hours. Because prior to the invention of electricity, it's like the whole universe went, hey, we're turning out the lights. And then the morning was like, hey, lights on, just a little bit of a hint here. Time to wake up. So you had people living much more in sync with what the rhythms of creation were doing around them. And then you had agricultural societies where you planted, you harvested, there was a dead period in the winter, and then the spring things came up. So you had rhythms and cycles that you adjusted to. And there's all of this data that when people began to have light, they started sleeping less because you could gradually live out of sync with the rhythms of the seasons and the days that were happening all around you. And now you can buy tomatoes in Minnesota at 2 a.m. And they're suspiciously the same exact shape and color, all of them. Where were they grown? I don't know. Who grew them? I don't know. Can they afford to send their kids to school? I don't know. I'm disconnected from these rhythms of planting, harvesting, light and dark. And it's no coincidence to me that as we are more and more disconnected from the rhythms of creation around us, you have more and more people going, I stayed too long. And so part of it is rediscovering the power of seasons and chapters. And this thing was great, and now it's done. And it's not done because somebody lied or cheated or somebody stole money. It's done because it's done. And the number of people I've met who are like, I think this thing is over, and I have no reason why other than it's just over. And they started sharing, I think this is over, and people were shocked and offended. Like, what a foreign idea, as opposed to, let's celebrate that we can even have a celebration about this. Because most of the time the person leaves, and the last thing you do is have a celebration dinner because the thing blew up. And there's actually a book by psychologist Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings. Like an entire body of thought simply about how to end well. And it's interesting because we're, like last year, every December, and this has happened now for a number of years in a row, I get this overwhelming sense that a number of things I've been talking about that year, it's time to be done talking about them. There are answers to questions, there are ideas. It's like you talked about those for a year. Done. Ending. We're ending this year. So I try, I have a new tour starting in January, which I'm really excited about. Otherwise, I try to keep it blank. And so there's this period in December when I don't know what I'll be talking about next year. Because I have to end something. And if you're going to end it, you can't immediately have all of the new things you're going to be doing. You have to have a period in between Joshua Tree and Octoon Baby. You have to have... Keep up, kids. And oftentimes, I've noticed something is ending, and the person is like, well, I'll let it end when I know what the next thing is. Which is like, I want to leap from this stone to this stone. And my experience has been, you generally get enough shape and texture and contour to know which direction to leap to. But if you had the whole thing sorted out, then there wouldn't be any faith or trust or energy there. It's like you need enough to know sort of it's this way. But if you get too much, it takes all the risk and all the things that shape us out of it. So oftentimes when something's ending, and you're like, yeah, but I don't have a clear, exactly no. Yeah, that's how endings work. If something ends, and then mystics call it liminal space. Liminal space is where you're not back in that thing, but the new thing hasn't revealed itself yet, and you're in between. And they say oftentimes what we do is we want to rush through the liminal space because we don't like the anxiety of not having this and not having the next thing, but it's the liminal space where you learn all the stuff because you're actually open to a bunch of things you're not normally open to. That's like all the things. So like there are like little liminal spaces. There are yearly. Sometimes there's the end of a career, relationship, living in some town, whatever. There's big ones, small ones. But this is part of the spiritual path, is learning to think, oh, this is an ending. Oh, I'm grieving something because it's going to be over. The only reason it's ending is because some new thing wants to be birthed. It's like you're training yourself not to panic or numb or hit the eject button, but just to let it be, oh, that's what this is. Got it. I think that's how it works. Endings.
I love that, Rob. Thank you. I think there's also, for those of you who are in a situation where all the energy around it is instructing you every day that it has ended, and you can't leave because you don't know what the next thing is. There's an incredible power. I wrote something about this once on Facebook years ago. There's an incredible power in these two words, not this. That's enough. That's enough to say, I'm leaving. Not this. What? Why? What are you going to do now? I don't know. Not this. Oh, where are you going to live? Not here. What's your job going to be? Not this job. Who's your partner going to be? Not this one. Not this. If you wait too long, your soul will become appalled. Because your soul will be appalled by being in the fetid swamp of not this. So if you wake up every day and everything in your soul says not this, and you say, no, I have to, your soul will get appalled, and you're going to start breaking. And this happened to me in my first marriage where I was breaking. I was a 29-year-old woman, and nothing in my body worked. Like, physically, pieces were falling off me. Like, my knees were... I still don't know what any of these conditions were. My knees were swollen to this size. I was in wrist braces because I had carpal tunnel. I was vomiting all day. I was breaking out in hot... Like, my soul was appalled. And so it was breaking me to stop me, to say, you cannot do another day of not this. So don't wait till you know what the next thing is. Just go. Just throw a rope over the wall and rescue yourself out of there. And better to walk away with nothing than to be there. One of the most inspiring women I know is a woman in my hometown who was an immigrant. She was married. She had 3 children under the age of 6. She didn't have her citizenship yet, and she was an abused wife. And everything about her world said, you can't leave this abusive relationship because you're completely hopeless. You've got 3 tiny children. How can you work? You don't have your citizenship yet. You don't have any money. This isn't your country. You're away from your people. Her husband had done what abusers always do, which is to take you away from your world so that he becomes your world. And now you can't leave. So she was right in that vortex, and she left. And she took 3 kids, and she slept in a hallway with 3 children for a year. Because not that. Because her whole being was like, not this. Okay, we'll sleep in a hallway. We'll sleep in a hallway under a stairwell. Because that's better than that. Because this can't go on anymore. So go. I give you permission. Don't let it get to the point where your soul is appalled.
Yeah, I love that phrase. Okay, can we do one more? I got one more for you.
Wait, did you just ask me? Oh, no, you did endings. Okay, cool. I just want to be fair. I already was accused of plagiarism. Justifiably.
Okay, this is a gift you've been to me, and I think for a lot of people, and this is an observation, but I'm going to find a question mark as I say it. You one time said to me about religion, you were like, we kind of went to church here and there growing up in Connecticut, and I was told, like, be a good person, take care of the poor. But you said I really didn't have anything to unlearn.
Yeah.
I wasn't given a big clunky system or anything. It was like, just be a good person, live frugally. And I was really struck with that because I think that's why your work has resonated with so many people, is when you went searching for more, the infinite, the divine spirit, you didn't have anything on your shoulder that you were like, is this? You weren't consulting any committee. You just publicly went after source and what was true and right and where it took you. And you weren't constantly checking in with central command. Are you with me on this? Yes. And I think part of the power of your voice is there's a purity to that. There was no thing you were having to deconstruct in order to then. You were just following it. Does that resonate with you? Question mark.
So I have to credit my parents with this. There are things that my parents taught me that I've had to unlearn, that including you should stay married to the same person forever. I had to unlearn that because that was something that was very important to them. And that's why my body was breaking apart when I was 29, because I was like, not this, but I have, central command says. So they did impart certain things to me, some stuff around money. They have a lot of I love them. I would give them both my kidneys. They're literally insane around money. So there's stuff around that I had to unlearn, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of scarcity. But one thing that they were just rock stars about is that they didn't believe in professionals about anything. They have no respect for professionals of any degree. Like doctors, teachers, lawyers, the police, experts. They have no regard whatsoever for experts. They're so independent, they're so resourceful, and they're so creative. They just do stuff. So they were like, we want to be farmers. And they're like, okay, we'll go be farmers. So they got some land and they're like, we'll stick things in the ground. I don't know. How hard can it be? My dad wanted to have goats. He took our Ford Pinto and he drove across the county to some guy who had goats, and he brought home in the backseat of the Ford Pinto 4 goats. And that's how we started that. Everything they did, they didn't believe in inspections on the house. They didn't believe in going to the dentist because people say, they didn't believe in anything that people say you have to do. They just didn't. My mom was a nurse, so when my dad almost cut his nose off with a chainsaw, she sewed it up. At our kitchen table. I grew up watching people who just did stuff. So I don't have embedded in my DNA respect for authority. I don't have embedded in my DNA respect for a sign that says no trespassing. My father has never seen a no trespassing sign that he wouldn't climb the fence to get on the other side of because he had no respect for it. He doesn't even see them other than, I remember him teaching me that the best place to camp is always the spot that has the sign that says no camping, because what that means is it's a really good camping spot. Because why would you don't put a sign that says no camping in the middle of an exit freeway, because no one would. But if there's a really good camping spot where people keep camping, it means it's a great place to camp. Put your tent there, Liz. This is what I was taught. This is what I was taught. They just didn't, they didn't believe in they didn't drink any of the Kool-Aid of anyone who ever sat in a committee. One of my favorite stories about my dad is so down to his marrow. He is so against being told what to do by anybody. And he worked in a corporate setting, which I can't even imagine how he did, but he worked at Uniroyal Chemical Company as an engineer for years before he quit to become a Christmas tree farmer, which is another thing that he just did, and then he rose to become the vice president of the Connecticut Christmas Tree Farmers Association, and we used to say, he's a heartbeat away from the presidency. But my dad, my favorite story, the operative story about my dad, sitting in a meeting, the kind of meetings that make you want to break your own neck, you know, in a corporate setting, a place where he did not belong and could not be, and so resistant to being a team player. He just could never be that guy. And they said, the management said, we're having a contest to come up with a new slogan for the Naugatuck, Connecticut Uniryl Chemical Rubber Factory. And we want a slogan that has something to do with quality, because we want to make a slogan that says that the most, you know, quality is our thing. And my dad raises his hand and suggests this slogan: Uniryl Chemical Company, quality, second only to productivity. Because he thought that was an honest assessment of actually like what. And the next year, they made the mistake of saying they're going to do a new slogan contest, and now we want a slogan that's about safety, because safety is the most important thing at the Uniryl Chemical Company. My dad raises his hand again, a year later, and says, Uniryl Chemical Company, safety, tied for second with productivity. Tied for second with quality, right behind productivity. He was just a rebel, you know, just a rebel. So I wasn't pushing against anything, you know. I just was like, and they never had the slightest anxiety when I started saying that I wanted to be a writer. They weren't, you know, they were a farmer, an engineer, a nurse. But when I started saying I wanted to be a writer, they're like, what do we care? It's not our life. Like, not a single bit of parental anxiety about how are you going to support yourself. They knew I would, because they knew they wouldn't. So there was no anxiety about how is Liz going to support themselves. They couldn't care less. They weren't going to. I knew that. They knew that. I always say that the greatest gift my parents ever gave me was that the slogan of our house was, you're on your own. Like, I feel like my parents spent every day trying to teach me, we are not here for you. We like you. We like you. We'll feed you. You have until about 5 minutes after you turn 17. We are not here for you. But you know what the amazing thing about that is? You get to then go do whatever you want. And I'm going to tell you, can I just tell this great story about, okay, so my family gets an email from me saying, I'm leaving Jose and I'm going to go be with Rhea. She's got terminal cancer. I've been in love with her quietly for years. I've been trying to be a good person. I haven't crossed any boundaries. Nobody's been lying or cheating, but this is just what has to happen now. I'm not taking questions. That's how my email ended. Just want to let you guys know. I'm not taking questions. There's only 3 people in this story right now who I care about. It's me, Jose, and Rhea. We're working it out. When it all settles, I'll be taking questions, but for now, this is just to inform you that this is happening. And my dad was like, we need to talk. And I was like, I just made it very clear that I'm not taking questions. I'll let you know. And they respected that. And I, 2 months later, I was ready to take questions when the dust had settled, and I made a trip to the Christmas tree farm and sat at the kitchen table and said, okay, now we can do questions. Any questions? And this is a judgment-free zone. I love you guys. I actually now am in a place where I have enough bandwidth to care what you think and to help you, whatever feelings that you've got about this. And my parents are really waspy, and they're farmers, and they were like this most uncomfortable moment of their life. And judgment-free zone are not the kind of words that I grew up with, but I was like, you know, bringing my like enlightenment to them. And I said, and I could see that they were suffering, so I said, well, let me help you. I said, why don't I start by telling you what I think you're thinking, or like the story I've got in my head about what I think about this. I said, Dad, I think you're disappointed in me. And he goes, disappointed? He looks at my mom, he goes, Carol, am I disappointed at Liz? And she said, I don't think so, John. He said, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I'm sad, but I don't think I'm disappointed. And then I turned to my mom and I said, okay, the story I have about you is that you're embarrassed about me because just when I seemed normal, like just when I had like a husband and a house and stepkids and Christmas cards and like you could talk about your friends and I had a life that looked like a normal life, now I'm a fucking weirdo again and I'm doing a crazy thing. So I think you're embarrassed. And my mother rises up like a hawk and comes into her full being and looks at me and says, "You forget who raised you." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "I'm the one who threw you out of this house when you were 17 and said, go create a life. And I meant your life." And that was our conversation about me being a lesbian. Is it? Your life, not our business. So when you're raised in that kind of an environment, go do your thing. Just don't come to us and ask us for, what do you need us to approve of you? We're not here for you. We like you. Now can we talk about something else? Yes, we can talk about something else now. So I think I have to give them the full props of just modeling what it looks like to your life. You want goats? Go get a Ford Pinto, put goats in it, have goats. You want to go be gay for a minute? Go be gay for a minute. Who are you going to ask? The gay police doctor? You're going to Google whether you should do this?
Are goats
What are you going to do? Go to the hospital and have a doctor sew up your nose? No, you just...
Crazy, right.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a long answer
I
to...
haven't heard some of that. I
Yeah.
really love that. That's a great.
You know my parents. They're great.
I love your parents, and I love what you just
I'm
said.
drinking your water. Because it's a no trespassing sign that I'm taking your shawl, I'm drinking your water, I'm creating my own systems of grief.
And we're thoroughly enjoying it. So we should wrap this up. I'm so glad.
Wow.
Your first Largo. This is so much fun.
So much fun. Thank you,
And
guys.
you know what? You know what we are gonna do? Alec recorded this, so I think we'll split it up into two parts and make it the first RobCasts of the year. So, to all my RobCast, look at me going in the future, to all my RobCast friends listening to the first episodes, hello from your Largo friends. It has been, when we first cooked this up and we were like, this is how we should start the new year together, and you all came, you got it. And then you danced with us, and we did this. So, on behalf of this brother and sister,
We do have interchangeable heads, you've noticed.
interchangeable brooms with brain jars. Brain jars. So, on behalf of both of us, it's 2000. What is it? Shine-teen?
2019.
May grace and peace be with you every step of the way. Thank you. Good night.